It's funny watching the religious try desperately to justify their blind faith, only to realize that they've got no idea at all what they're talking about, and really they just don't care. This is pure emotional garbage masquerading as rational thought. But that's all religion is, after all. So let's go watch a prime example of religious fail. And we're back again today with Nathan Betts over at Ravi Zacharias' channel. Religion is a double standard. The religious don't operate the same way with religion as they do with everything else in reality. Religion is emotional, reality is not. But they really couldn't care less how badly they make a fool of themselves. They're just preaching to the choir after all, and of course disabling the comments so nobody can point out just how dumb they really are. That's hardly a surprise, is it? Alright, I don't know that it's possible to know what is absolutely true to any real degree of absolute certainty. But you can certainly know what is likely true based on objective evidence. Is claim X factually correct? It either is or it's not. So how do we test claim X to see if it stands up to intellectual rigor? That's really what matters here. Can we test claim X sufficiently to be reasonably certain that it best represents objective reality? Now, we might not be absolutely sure, but we can certainly be more sure that claim X is better supported by objective demonstrable evidence than claim Y is or claim Z is. But the religious, they don't even try to do that, do they?
How do I know what is true? Now, when I've been asked this question, often what I find people are asking is really this. If there is such a thing as truth, Nathan, how do I know it?
Now, I'm not saying that he's lying, but it's funny how the religious tend to reinterpret questions into something that they think they can work with. Now, do I think that both questions are valid to ask? Sure. And honestly, I don't think they're significantly different, but maybe Nathan had to rephrase the question so that he could come up with a religiously defensible answer. I guess we'll have to see.
What I'd like to do here is just give you 3 terms to work with, and effectively these are 3 tests as to how we can ascertain what the truth really is. Here are the terms: correspondence theory, coherence theory, and then explanatory power.
Notice that evidence is not implicitly stated among those concepts. We'll have to see where he goes with it, of course, but this is already going sideways, and that's not a surprise. I'm sure this is going to be all about feelings and not at all about facts. But let's be honest, the religious aren't very concerned with the facts anyhow, are they? So I guess we'll have to see where he's going with this. I don't think it's going to be anyplace good.
Let me explain these terms from top to bottom. Correspondence theory asks the question, look, what you believe, what you have placed your trust in, does it correspond to reality? Does it have factual evidence to back it up?
And for anything that the religious believe, that answer is no. Of course, I'd argue that doing things the way Nathan says is doing them inherently ass backwards. You shouldn't believe anything until you have proven that it accurately represents reality. You should not hold a belief until you have already rationally confirmed that belief is reasonably true. Your feelings should have very little to do with your beliefs. They should all be intellectual in nature, and when it comes to religion, that's simply not the case.
So think about it like this. If I were to say to you, look, last night Manchester United won the football game. Well, that statement is true if and only if Manchester United actually won the football game. Correspondence theory. What I believe must correspond to factual evidence.
True, but that's not an extraordinary claim to make, assuming that Manchester United actually wins any games, which I really have no idea whether they do or not. But let's assume for the moment that they win somewhat regularly. I might accept that unimportant claim for the sake of argument without going to check whether they actually won last night or not. But I can prove that Manchester United exists, that they actually do play football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, and that they have, in fact, won games in the past. Those are all things for which we can provide evidence and determine objectively as so. Now, do that with your God. Go ahead. Prove any of that. Prove anything. Because that's where these examples always go wrong. They are comparing things that simply are not comparable.
Then we move on to coherence theory. Coherence theory asks the question, look, what you believe, again, what you've placed your trust in, does it cohere? Is there a high degree of internal consistency?
Nathan, have you read the Bible? There is virtually no internal consistency. That's why there are more than 42,000 distinct sects of Christianity. Nobody can agree on what the Bible actually says or what they think the Bible actually means. And in fact, apologists have to spend considerable time explaining what the Bible means because you can't get from here to there just in the text alone. They have to rationalize why the Bible means something other than what it actually says. Nobody can actually agree on what the Bible means, which means the Bible isn't really consistent. If it was, you wouldn't need to keep reinterpreting it, and there wouldn't be so many people who are convinced that they've got it right and everybody else has it wrong.
Let me explain this a bit further. Say you and I are at a dinner party, and over a cup of coffee, we're talking, and you say, Nathan, hey, look, I just found out you have a son, and he's around 2 years old. Is that right? And I say to you with much enthusiasm, yes, we do have a son, and we are so pleased with him. We love our son. Then one of our friends walks into the room and pops into the conversation, and he says, hey, Nathan, I just heard that you have a son. I didn't know that. He's around 2 years old. Is that right? And I say, no, that isn't actually. We don't have a son. Now, for the first person in this conversation, you're going to be looking at me and saying, hold on, which is it? It can't be both. Why? Because there's a contradiction there. There isn't coherence.
And the Bible is stuffed full of contradictions. Yes, I know the religious can always make up an explanation out of whole cloth that sort of explains it away if you don't look too close. But going by the text alone, there is no question that those contradictions exist. Therefore, you've just shown that your beliefs are not consistent. Granted, you're not going to care, because your blind faith demands that the Bible must be consistent, even though, demonstrably, it isn't. Again, believing things for which you have not previously verified that they are true is not how any of this works.
In order for something to be true, it must pass the correspondence theory, but also the coherence theory.
And Christianity plainly fails both. It does not correspond to reality in any meaningful way, and it is full of internal contradictions. Therefore, according to your very own rules, this is a false belief. Now, of course, you'll never admit to any of that because you don't care, but that doesn't change the facts. Seriously, is anyone surprised by this? Anyone at all?
Then we move on to explanatory power. Explanatory power simply asks the question, does what I believe, again, what I've placed my trust in, does it help me make sense of my observations of the world, but also my longing and desires that I have?
And that's meaningless. It's just an appeal to emotion, which is a logical fallacy. Essentially, what he's saying is, do I like it? Well, who cares? Your emotional comfort and your personal attachment to an idea have no bearing whatsoever on whether or not that idea is factually true. Ideas are true or false without once considering your desire to believe in them. Christianity has failed two of your standards, and the third is entirely irrelevant. Therefore, by your own rules, Christianity is not worth believing as true. Thanks a lot for confirming that, Nathan.
The observations that I have of the world, that the world is not the way that it ought to be. There's something wrong. There are many things wrong with the world. But then also my longing for significance, to matter, but also my observation that deep down, yes, I am capable of doing great things, but also I'm deeply flawed.
You're really kind of messed up, aren't you, Nathan? Now, I'd be interested in figuring out if you thought all of those things before you became a Christian, or if being a Christian or being exposed to Christian dogma screwed you up in your head like that. Crazy people don't think that they're crazy. Crazy people think they're completely sane. The idea that you have all of those feelings that correspond to the belief system that you're emotionally predisposed to hold, and that somehow proves that your beliefs are true, that's entirely fallacious thinking. Really, Nathan, do you listen to the insanity coming out of your mouth?
The question is, what faith, what system of belief, what worldview best explains these observations and these longings?
Faith and worldviews, as you use those terms, are meaningless. You shouldn't have faith because you should be testing your potential beliefs against objective reality and only accepting those things provisionally that best fit with the real world. You have already proven that you haven't done that, and in fact, you have absolutely no interest of any kind in doing that. It's all feelings, no facts required. In fact, facts be damned. Anyone who relies on blind faith is doing something intellectually wrong. And that's you. What is wrong with you, Nathan?
When we look to the Christian faith,
Christianity fails miserably. Or is that not what you were going to say?
and then look to these three tests of truth: correspondence theory, coherence theory, and explanatory power. The Christian faith is just simply amazing in that it just passes these three tests with flying colors.
Not even remotely true. But this is why religion, not just Christianity, but all religion, relies on men in dresses talking out of their ass to educate the congregation. And I use that term very, very loosely, instead of relying on, say, science. You know, something that has been proven repeatedly to give us the best representation of objective reality that we have. You know, you could actually go with objectively demonstrable evidence, or really anything but feelings to explain why you ought to believe. It is belief misplaced, not belief proven, because proof, according to you people, is vastly overrated. Again, it's why there are so many opinions about what Christianity actually is, and none of them are any more demonstrably right or any more demonstrably wrong than any of the others. They're all just wishful thinking and emotionally derived opinion. It's belief first, proof never. Because they're not at all interested in proof. They don't care about evidence. They only care about their emotional comfort and if that comfort is met. And that's just stupid. Your feelings mean nothing to reality. Reality is what it is. Your feelings be damned. It's like crying that the speed of light doesn't make you feel good, therefore you're going to believe it must be something else because somehow that makes sense to you. And if you do that, you're an idiot. This isn't a good test for truth. It's a bald rationalization why the religious ignore truth in favor of their own overly emotional feels. And that's not something that anyone ought to be proud of. It just proves that you're a moron. Come on, Nathan, you have to do better than that. You're just showing that you and Ravi Zacharias are idiots. And I guess that's no surprise, is it?
bum.